Listen up. I'm about to talk about something that a lot of us don't want to face, but it's the truth. You see, there's this idea we hold in our heads about love, about marriage. We think once you've got it, it's set, it's done, right? But I'm here to tell you that's where the trouble starts. The truth is, we've all got these deep-seated desires, needs we sometimes don't even understand. And if they aren't addressed, if they're neglected, those needs start to look for a way out. The question we're diving into today is, why do married men end up being attracted to others? Now, you might be sitting there thinking, I know this story, or this isn't for me. But that's exactly the problem. If we don't take the time to have these real conversations, to explore why this happens, then we're just going to keep repeating the same mistakes, keep putting ourselves and our marriages at risk. Stick with me. By the end of this speech, you'll understand not just why it happens, but how we can stop it, how we can take action and make our relationships stronger than ever. But first, we need to understand the forces at play, the deeper truths about human attraction. You'll want to hear this because what I'm going to say next might just change the way you see love forever. Part of the speech. Now, let's talk about the reality of desire. People think desire is something that's just there. You either have it or you don't. But it's not that simple. There's this complex thing we don't always acknowledge: emotional fulfillment. We're talking about feeling seen, feeling heard, feeling valued. If that's missing, it's easy for someone to feel invisible, to feel like they're not enough. It's not about love going away, it's about needs going unmet. You see, society tells us that if you're married, that should be all you need. But what's missing is the understanding that people change. What you needed 5 years ago might not be what you need today. The emotional connection might fade. The physical connection might fade. And when that happens, temptation creeps in. But it's more than just a lack of attention. It's about complacency. If you're not putting in the work to maintain the relationship, if you're not communicating, if you're not showing that love every single day, you're setting yourself up. When the connection weakens, when the spark dies down, those outside forces, whether it's society, your environment, or just the boredom that settles in, they'll start whispering. And those whispers can turn into actions. But here's the thing. You don't have to fall into this trap. There are ways to build stronger marriages to avoid these temptations. The answer is communication. The answer is intimacy. The answer is being present with your partner, not just physically, but emotionally. You've got to keep that fire burning. Human desire is an intricate force, one that can't be easily explained by surface-level attraction or simple wants. When we talk about relationships, particularly marriages, there's a deeper, more complex dynamic at play that shapes attraction and desire over time. This complexity goes far beyond physical attraction, stretching into emotional needs, psychological fulfillment, and the very essence of human connection. Let's break it down. At its core, human desire is driven by an innate need for connection. We're social creatures by nature, and we thrive on bonds that nourish us. In the early stages of a relationship, that bond is fresh, intense, and almost magnetic. When you first meet someone, the attraction feels effortless, the conversations flow, the emotional highs are constant. But as time goes on, that initial intensity can start to fade, not because the love has disappeared, but because the environment in which that connection was built has changed. This is where complexity enters the picture. Human desire isn't a static thing, it evolves. And it doesn't just evolve in one direction, it can expand in many different ways. At the heart of this evolution is a key psychological principle. Human beings are wired for variety. This isn't about being dissatisfied with what you have, but rather a fundamental desire for novelty. It's why we're attracted to new experiences, new environments, and yes, sometimes new people. For married men, this need for variety can often become a source of internal conflict. A man may love his wife deeply, but over time the relationship can feel predictable or even stale. The physical intimacy, once fresh and exciting, may have fallen into routine. The emotional connection, while still there, might not feel as intense as it did in the early days of the marriage. As a result, a man's subconscious mind may start seeking novelty outside the relationship, not because he wants to replace his partner, but because his brain craves the excitement and energy that comes from something new. This isn't just about sex either. Emotional desire plays a huge role. Emotional desire can be just as powerful as physical attraction, if not more so. Humans need emotional validation and connection to feel understood, appreciated, and supported. Over time, if those emotional needs are not met within the marriage, it can create a longing for that connection elsewhere. The problem isn't always about infidelity, it's about emotional neglect. A man who feels emotionally unfulfilled in his marriage might start looking for validation from others, perhaps through friendships, work relationships, or even social media. These connections might not even lead to romantic entanglements, but the underlying desire for acknowledgement and connection is still the same. Another layer of complexity comes from societal expectations. Men in particular are often conditioned by society to believe that they must fulfill certain roles, to be providers, protectors, and emotionally strong individuals. These pressures can create internal conflicts. A man might feel that, despite being in a committed relationship, he's still expected to maintain a certain image of masculinity that doesn't always align with his emotional needs. When those needs are left unaddressed, the attraction to others can stem from an unconscious desire to escape the weight of these expectations, to seek relief from the emotional burden they carry. Moreover, there's the influence of external factors, such as media, advertising, and cultural norms, which continually promote the idea of idealized relationships or the perfect partner. These portrayals can distort the way we view our own marriages and relationships. A man might start comparing his relationship to what he sees on TV, in movies, or on social media. Glossy images of passion, excitement, and perfect compatibility. When his reality doesn't match up to these ideals, dissatisfaction can creep in, and with that dissatisfaction comes the desire to find something that feels closer to the fantasy. But perhaps the most significant force shaping desire is the psychological concept of incentive motivation. This idea suggests that people are drawn to things that provide immediate reward or gratification. In the context of a marriage, when emotional or physical needs aren't being met, an individual may feel a pull toward external sources that promise a quick emotional payoff, whether it's attention from someone else, the rush of a flirtation, or the validation of feeling desired. These external sources provide an immediate sense of satisfaction, but they often lack the depth and longevity of the connection found in a committed, intimate relationship. The complexity of human desire is also influenced by a lack of communication. Over time, as a marriage progresses, couples may stop discussing their needs, emotional, physical, or otherwise. Communication becomes routine or even non-existent, and when one partner feels neglected or misunderstood, that frustration can manifest as a desire to seek out that missing connection elsewhere. Without the right dialogue, desires and needs get buried beneath the day-to-day grind of life, leaving both partners feeling disconnected. This emotional disconnection can set the stage for the kind of attraction to others that we're discussing here. But none of this means that desire for others in a marriage is inevitable. Recognizing that human desire is complex is the first step in understanding the dynamics of relationships and the forces that influence attraction. It's not about justifying the behavior, but about understanding it. And the good news is, this understanding opens the door to solutions. Once we recognize the roots of desire, we can take steps to rekindle connection, to communicate our needs, and to fulfill the emotional and physical aspects of the relationship that might have been neglected. Human beings, by nature, are deeply driven by emotional and physical needs. These needs are often intertwined, influencing each other and shaping the way we experience connection, intimacy, and attraction. In the context of marriage, emotional and physical fulfillment play a significant role in shaping the overall health of the relationship. When these aspects are neglected or left unaddressed, it can lead to dissatisfaction, disconnection, and in some cases, the attraction to others outside the marriage. Let's start with emotional fulfillment. Emotions are at the heart of all human connections. In a marriage, emotional fulfillment refers to the deep sense of being understood, valued, and cared for by your partner. It's about feeling safe to express yourself, knowing your feelings are acknowledged and validated. Without emotional fulfillment, a person can feel isolated, misunderstood, or even invisible within their own relationship. This emotional void can breed frustration and longing, and when these feelings go unchecked, they can lead someone to look for validation elsewhere. In a thriving marriage, partners are there for each other not just in the good times, but also during the challenges. They listen, support, and provide comfort when things get tough. This emotional connection provides a secure foundation where both partners feel they are partners in life, not just roommates or co-parents. However, over time, life's pressures, whether it's raising children, pursuing careers, or simply navigating the routines of daily life, can chip away at this emotional bond. Busy schedules, lack of quality time, or the assumption that the emotional needs of the other are being met can cause emotional disconnection. When emotional fulfillment begins to fade, it's not unusual for one partner to feel neglected. It's not necessarily that the love is gone, it's that the emotional needs aren't being met. Without this connection, a person may begin to seek it elsewhere, not necessarily out of malice, but simply out of a deep desire for emotional validation. The attraction to someone who provides this validation, even in small ways, can feel like a form of relief. It's a temporary solution, but without addressing the core issue of emotional neglect, it can set the stage for a deeper emotional or even physical betrayal. Physical fulfillment in a marriage works in much the same way. Physical intimacy is not just about sex. It's about the way a couple connects physically on a daily basis. This includes holding hands, hugging, kissing, and engaging in sexual activity. These acts of affection serve as both a physical and emotional bonding experience, helping to maintain connection and closeness between partners. Physical touch is deeply ingrained in the way humans experience love and attachment, and without it, the relationship can begin to feel distant or cold. In long-term marriages, the initial physical attraction that was once so intense can sometimes fade, particularly when life becomes busier or when one or both partners stop prioritizing intimacy. When physical fulfillment is lacking, a person may start to feel disconnected from their partner. This doesn't necessarily mean that they've stopped loving their spouse. Rather, the lack of physical connection can lead to a feeling of being emotionally distant, even in a shared life. The challenge, of course, is that physical intimacy isn't just about the act of sex itself. It's about how one feels loved and desired. When physical touch becomes rare or mechanical, it can trigger feelings of rejection, self-doubt, and even insecurity. For some people, these feelings can become overwhelming, and they may start to seek out physical attention from someone else as a way to feel desired or appreciated again. The attraction to another person isn't just about the physical act of sex, it's about regaining that sense of affirmation, that feeling of being wanted that may be missing in their current relationship. However, it's crucial to understand that the lack of physical and emotional fulfillment isn't just an issue of desire or want. It's a complex psychological and emotional state. It's often a reflection of deeper issues in the relationship, such as lack of communication, unexpressed needs, or the assumption that intimacy will just continue without effort. In a healthy relationship, both emotional and physical fulfillment should be nurtured and continually cultivated. Relationships require consistent work to ensure that both partners feel valued, desired, and connected. When these aspects of the relationship are addressed, however, the results can be transformative. Emotional and physical fulfillment work hand in hand to strengthen the bond between partners, ensuring that the connection remains strong and resilient over time. Emotional fulfillment provides the security and trust necessary for physical intimacy to thrive, while physical intimacy reinforces the emotional bond that keeps the relationship grounded. It's also important to acknowledge that these needs may look different from person to person. One partner may place a higher value on emotional connection and find fulfillment in deep conversations and shared experiences, while the other partner may prioritize physical touch and find fulfillment through acts of affection. Recognizing these differences and working to meet each other's needs in a way that feels fulfilling for both people is key to maintaining a strong relationship. The solution isn't simply about fixing the lack of emotional or physical fulfillment, but about creating an environment where both partners can express their needs and desires openly without fear of judgment or rejection. Healthy communication, mutual respect, and the willingness to work together to fulfill each other's emotional and physical needs are essential components of a successful marriage. In today's world, society and media play an undeniable role in shaping how we view relationships, attraction, and even the expectations we hold for ourselves and our partners. The influence is subtle yet powerful, shaping our perceptions of what love, marriage, and even attraction should look like. This constant stream of ideals that may not reflect reality, can be both inspiring and damaging. And the way society and media portray relationships often contributes to the dissatisfaction or desires men might feel outside of their marriages. Let's explore how these forces shape and sometimes distort our understanding of relationships and attraction. First, we must acknowledge the role of media in shaping idealized views of romantic relationships. Movies, TV shows, advertisements, and social media constantly reinforce a picture-perfect image of love and partnership. Think about it. In most romantic films or television shows, couples are portrayed as deeply in love, passionate, and completely in sync, often facing dramatic external obstacles but never real internal challenges. These portrayals highlight the emotional highs of a relationship and often gloss over the day-to-day struggles that come with long-term commitment. This creates unrealistic expectations about what a healthy marriage or relationship should look like. For a married man, this constant exposure to idealized love can create a sense of dissatisfaction or yearning. The excitement and intensity of early-stage love, seen as the norm in media, can lead to the belief that if those emotions aren't present in his own relationship, something is wrong. When the connection with his wife feels more mundane, or when the passion has dimmed over time, the influence of media might convince him that there's something missing, or even that the perfect partner is out there somewhere. Additionally, the notion of soulmates, a concept frequently emphasized in media and pop culture, further complicates this issue. The idea that there is a singular ideal person out there who will complete you, who will perfectly match your needs and desires, can create unrealistic standards. If a man is exposed to these ideas, he may begin to feel that if his current partner doesn't measure up to this idealized version of love or connection, it's because they're simply not the right person. This kind of thinking undermines the effort and work that any meaningful relationship requires and fosters a sense of longing for something that may not even exist. But it's not just romantic films or TV shows that have this effect. Advertisements and social media also play a major role in shaping our perception of what makes us desirable and worthy of attention. Ads often portray couples who are constantly happy, attractive, and physically fit, reinforcing the idea that love and attraction are tied to a certain image of physical perfection. When we see constant images of flawless models, it can create a distorted idea of what physical attraction should look like, leaving people feeling insecure about their own appearance or the appearance of their partner. For married men, these media portrayals can be a double-edged sword. On one hand, they might feel compelled to live up to these standards, and this pressure can result in a constant comparison between their real life and the idealized version they see in media. On the other hand, the hypersexualized nature of much of today's media can make them more prone to distraction by others outside of their marriage, particularly if they feel their current relationship is lacking in physical attraction or excitement. The constant barrage of perfectly sculpted bodies, radiant smiles, and perfect couples creates an environment where dissatisfaction can thrive. The temptation to compare, to seek out something that seems more fulfilling or exciting, becomes stronger. Social media amplifies this effect even further. The curated nature of social media feeds, where individuals only share the most idealized, filtered versions of their lives, can exacerbate feelings of inadequacy or longing. Many people, including married men, may scroll through these feeds and encounter photos of seemingly perfect relationships, adventures, and moments of joy. They might see their peers in relationships that appear carefree, passionate, and exciting, leading them to wonder why their own marriage doesn't match up. The visibility of these curated, perfect relationships can contribute to dissatisfaction and even a subconscious desire to seek out the same sense of excitement or fulfillment elsewhere. Beyond the idealized images, media also perpetuates certain social norms and stereotypes regarding masculinity, which can further complicate how men view relationships. Society often imposes the expectation that men should always be strong, independent, and emotionally restrained. These norms discourage emotional expression and communication in relationships, which are essential for maintaining closeness and intimacy. When men are taught to suppress their emotions or avoid vulnerability, it creates a disconnect between their emotional needs and their ability to communicate them to their partners. Over time, this emotional suppression can lead to dissatisfaction, as unexpressed emotions begin to fester and manifest in unhealthy ways, such as seeking attention or emotional validation outside of the relationship. The glorification of certain types of masculinity in media, whether it's the dominant, emotionally reserved alpha male or the charming, irresistible bachelor, can influence how men perceive their role in relationships. When these ideals clash with the reality of long-term commitment, where vulnerability, communication, and emotional support are critical, it can lead to frustration and a desire for something that feels more aligned with those media-driven fantasies. Furthermore, media often neglects to address the deeper complexities of relationships, things like personal growth, emotional intelligence, and the challenges of navigating real-world intimacy. These nuances are often glossed over in favor of dramatic moments or simple narratives, leaving out the hard work, compromise, and resilience that make a marriage or relationship truly fulfilling. As a result, when married men experience the inevitable lows in their relationships, they might question whether they've made a mistake or whether they are missing out on something more fulfilling, something they've seen portrayed in the media. Of the most insidious forces that can quietly erode a marriage is the gradual neglect of emotional, physical, and even social needs. Over time, complacency can set in, a silent killer that slowly undermines the connection between partners. It's not about a dramatic event or an overt betrayal, but rather the small, everyday ways that we fail to nurture the bond we have with our spouses. In the context of why married men may be attracted to others, neglect and complacency are often the underlying causes that push a person to seek something they feel is missing. Let's take a closer look at how this manifests and why it can have such profound consequences. 1. The erosion of emotional connection. In the early stages of a relationship, the emotional bond between partners is usually strong and vibrant. Conversations are deep, the connection is constantly nurtured, and both individuals are highly attuned to each other's needs and feelings. However, as time goes on, life becomes busy, careers take priority, children demand attention, and the daily task of living can easily overshadow the time and effort needed to maintain a strong emotional connection. What happens when the emotional connection weakens is subtle but significant. It starts with small signs, less meaningful conversation, less quality time spent together, and less emotional support. Gradually, both partners may start feeling more like co-parents or roommates than lovers or companions. This lack of emotional fulfillment is often not immediate, and it doesn't necessarily mean that love has vanished. But what it does mean is that the deep, intimate bond that was once central to the relationship is being neglected. For a man in this situation, the absence of emotional connection may not immediately prompt infidelity, but over time, the emotional void can grow. This is especially true when men don't feel that they can express their needs for emotional intimacy. The societal pressures that often discourage emotional vulnerability in men can make it difficult for them to communicate this dissatisfaction to their wives. Instead, the neglect festers and they may begin to feel unappreciated, misunderstood, or emotionally distant. At this point, the idea of seeking that emotional connection elsewhere, whether through friendship or a fleeting flirtation, may feel like the only option to regain a sense of closeness and understanding. 2. Physical intimacy fades and desire dwindles. Physical intimacy in a marriage is not just about sex, but about how partners maintain closeness through touch, affection, and shared experiences. When the physical side of a relationship starts to fade, it can lead to a sense of disconnection that's hard to ignore. The gestures that once symbolized closeness, holding hands, kissing, cuddling, become less frequent. Sexual intimacy may become routine or, in some cases, cease altogether. While this can occur naturally as couples age or as life circumstances change, the gradual erosion of physical connection can be a consequence of neglect. The busyness of life often leads couples to put less effort into maintaining their physical connection. This might begin with missed date nights, fewer romantic gestures, or a lack of attention to the needs of the other person. Over time, the emotional and physical distance between partners deepens, leaving one or both feeling neglected. For many men, physical touch and sexual intimacy are crucial aspects of feeling desired and loved. When these needs aren't met within the marriage, it can create frustration and a sense of longing. This isn't just about the physical act of sex. It's about feeling wanted, feeling appreciated, and feeling like their partner sees them as desirable. If these needs are unmet, the temptation to seek validation elsewhere can arise. These might come in the form of attention from others, whether through innocent flirtation or a more significant emotional or physical connection with someone outside the marriage. 3. The seduction of novelty and escape. When both emotional and physical intimacy begin to fade, there's often a sense of longing for something new. The attraction to someone outside the marriage might not be about the other person in question, but about the novelty of a new connection, a new experience that breaks the monotony of everyday life. This is where complacency can be especially dangerous. It's not just about neglecting one's partner. It's about the way the relationship has become predictable and even dull. The energy and excitement that once came naturally may no longer be present. And this can be an incredibly difficult feeling to address. For a man who feels stuck in a routine, the allure of something fresh and exciting becomes a temptation. It's not that he necessarily wants to replace his spouse or undermine his marriage, but rather that the newness of another person offers a temporary escape from the emotional and physical void he feels at home. The feeling of being wanted and seen in new light can temporarily reinvigorate his sense of self-worth and desire. And complacency allows this pattern to fester. When couples become comfortable in their routines, they often stop putting in the effort to engage with each other in meaningful ways. Conversations become surface level, and the energy that once made their connection vibrant fades. When people stop investing in the relationship, it creates a vacuum that's ripe for external attraction to fill. 4. Unaddressed resentment and growing frustration. When neglect and complacency set in, they often lead to resentment. Small grievances that were never discussed or addressed build up over time, becoming unspoken frustrations that silently simmer beneath the surface. This is especially common in long-term relationships, where partners often assume that their feelings and needs are understood without ever articulating them. The longer resentment goes unaddressed, the more it eats away at the bond between two people. For a married man, this growing frustration may not always be conscious, but it becomes apparent in the form of dissatisfaction. He may start to feel that his needs, whether emotional or physical, are unimportant or overlooked. This sense of being undervalued can lead to bitterness, and when this bitterness is not confronted or communicated, the temptation to seek out attention or affection from someone else becomes a means of validating one's worth. 5. The consequences of complacency. Long-term damage to the relationship. If complacency continues unchecked, it can lead to irreparable damage. The longer the neglect persists, the harder it becomes to rebuild the connection. Emotional and physical disconnection create a divide that can feel too wide to bridge. What was once a deep bond may feel like a distant memory, and the effort required to restore that connection may feel overwhelming. As one partner becomes more frustrated or feels more neglected, the relationship becomes strained. If one person is seeking fulfillment elsewhere, it often compounds the emotional pain for the other partner when they find out. This cycle of neglect and dissatisfaction often leads to a breakdown in trust, communication, and intimacy. At this point, the damage to the marriage is no longer just about the attraction to someone else. It's about the failure to address and repair the foundation of the relationship itself. Human beings at their core are wired to seek validation. From a young age, we are taught that our worth is often measured by the approval and acknowledgement of others. In relationships, this validation becomes crucial, especially in the context of marriage. It's a desire to feel seen, appreciated, and loved for who we are. However, when this search for validation goes unmet within a marriage, it can create a sense of insecurity and lead to a search for external sources of affirmation. In the case of married men, this often translates into seeking attention or affection from someone outside the marriage, not necessarily out of dissatisfaction with the spouse, but because of an internal need for validation that feels unfulfilled. Let's explore how this search for validation and underlying insecurity can drive a person to seek attention elsewhere. 1. The need for recognition. At its core, the need for validation is a desire to feel recognized, to be seen and valued for our unique qualities, strengths, and contributions. This need does not vanish after entering into a committed relationship or marriage. In fact, it often becomes more pronounced. In a marriage, validation can manifest in many ways, through compliments, acknowledgement of achievements, emotional support, physical affection, and shared experiences. The recognition of one's worth is deeply tied to the emotional health of the relationship. When a man feels recognized and valued by his wife, it strengthens the emotional bond and deepens their connection. Validation is not always about grand gestures. Sometimes it's the little things, a kind word, an understanding ear, or a simple gesture of love that reaffirms a person's worth. However, when this validation is lacking, it can create a feeling of being invisible or unimportant. The person may begin to feel that they are no longer seen or appreciated for who they are, and this can lead to feelings of inadequacy and insecurity. In long-term marriages, when the routine of life takes over, this validation can slip through the cracks. Responsibilities such as parenting, career obligations, and daily stressors can create an emotional distance between partners. Over time, the absence of validation can make a man feel like he is no longer the person he once was in the eyes of his wife. This feeling of being overlooked or unappreciated can foster frustration, and in some cases, it may prompt him to seek that recognition elsewhere. 2. Insecurity and the impact on self-worth. Insecurity is another key factor that plays a significant role in the search for validation. Insecurity, whether related to physical appearance, career achievements, or emotional well-being, can undermine a person's sense of self-worth. For many men, insecurity often arises when they feel they are not measuring up to their own standards or the standards set by society. The societal pressure to perform, succeed, and be the man can be overwhelming. Men are often taught to project strength, confidence, and independence. They may feel pressure to meet high expectations, whether in their careers, their appearance, or their roles as partners and fathers. If a man feels that he is not meeting these expectations, whether due to age, personal challenges, or changes in his relationship, it can lead to a deep sense of inadequacy. This insecurity can be particularly pronounced in marriages where the emotional connection has faded or the physical intimacy is lacking. A man may start questioning his own attractiveness, his value as a partner, or his role in the relationship. This sense of insecurity can be amplified if he perceives his partner as no longer appreciating or valuing him. As a result, he may seek attention from others in an effort to boost his self-esteem and affirm his worth. The search for validation outside of the marriage is often an unconscious attempt to fill this void. It's not necessarily about wanting to cheat or betray the marriage, but about needing someone to recognize his value, someone who can make him feel attractive, desired, and important again. This external validation serves as a temporary fix for the deeper insecurities that he may be grappling with internally. 3. The cycle of seeking attention and the temporary high. When a man seeks validation from someone outside his marriage, the initial attention can feel intoxicating. The excitement of receiving attention, compliments, or admiration from someone new can temporarily boost his self-esteem and help him feel validated in ways that he may have been missing at home. This external validation can feel like a relief, providing an emotional high that temporarily masks the feelings of inadequacy or insecurity he's been experiencing. However, this sense of validation is fleeting. While the attention from someone outside the marriage can momentarily fulfill a desire for recognition, it does not address the root cause of the insecurity. The emotional high that comes from this external validation often fades quickly, leaving the person feeling even more disconnected and insecure than before. This creates a dangerous cycle where the need for validation becomes an ongoing search, one that can lead to repeated instances of seeking attention from others. In this cycle, the person might feel temporarily validated, but without addressing the underlying emotional needs or insecurities, the relationship at home continues to deteriorate. The more a person seeks external validation, the less likely they are to invest in the emotional repair needed within their marriage. Over time, this can erode the foundation of the relationship, as one or both partners begin to feel neglected, undervalued, and emotionally distant. And 4, the dangers of seeking external validation. The danger in seeking validation outside the marriage is not just in the act itself, but in what it signifies about the emotional state of the relationship. When validation becomes the primary motivator for seeking attention from someone else, it reflects a deeper emotional disconnection within the marriage. The emotional void that results from a lack of validation in the marriage often leads to frustration, resentment, and a sense of unfulfillment. Moreover, external validation can reinforce the belief that one's worth is contingent on the opinions and attention of others rather than on self-acceptance and the emotional connection within the marriage. This mindset can further undermine the self-esteem and emotional well-being of the person seeking validation, creating a perpetual cycle of dissatisfaction and insecurity. If the search for external validation goes unchecked, it can ultimately lead to betrayal and infidelity, as the person may continue to seek emotional or physical connections outside the marriage. The longer the underlying emotional issues remain unresolved, the more likely it is that the relationship will suffer irreparable damage. The sense of emotional neglect can erode trust, intimacy, and communication, which are essential for a healthy marriage. 5. Addressing the need for validation. The solution to this issue lies in open communication and mutual support. It's important for both partners to recognize that the need for validation is a natural part of being human. In a healthy marriage, both individuals should feel seen, appreciated, and loved for who they are. Validation is not about grand gestures, but about consistent, everyday acts of affirmation, whether through words of encouragement, physical affection, or emotional support. For men who feel insecure or unappreciated, it's crucial to address these feelings openly with their partners. This might require vulnerability, which can be difficult, especially in a society that often discourages emotional openness in men. However, by communicating needs, desires, and concerns, both partners can work together to address the underlying issues and rebuild the emotional and physical connection in the marriage. The journey through understanding why married men may find themselves attracted to others is not a simple one. It is shaped by a multitude of factors that go beyond the surface-level temptation or momentary lapse in judgment. From the emotional and physical voids created by neglect and complacency to the deeper societal and media-driven pressures that skew perceptions of love and fulfillment, the reasons are often complex and layered. At the heart of these dynamics lies a universal truth: the human need for connection, validation, and the desire to feel seen, valued, and desired. What becomes clear through exploring these factors is that attraction outside the marriage is rarely driven by a desire to replace the spouse or destroy the bond that once existed. Rather, it's often the result of unmet needs, insecurities, and the gradual emotional erosion that can creep into even the most loving relationships. When emotional connection fades, physical intimacy is neglected, and validation is sought elsewhere, a person may subconsciously seek affirmation from outside sources, filling a void that was never properly addressed within the relationship. As we've seen, society and media reinforce unrealistic standards of romance and masculinity, leaving individuals feeling like they're falling short of these idealized expectations. These pressures, combined with personal insecurities and frustrations, can create fertile ground for distraction and dissatisfaction, leading to external attractions that might initially seem harmless, but often carry deep emotional consequences. However, the key takeaway from these insights is not to dwell in blame or despair, but to understand that these challenges can be overcome with conscious effort, communication, and a renewed commitment to the relationship. A successful marriage requires constant care, effort, and emotional investment. It's not enough to simply assume that the connection will remain strong without nurturing it. Relationships, like any living entity, require attention, affection, and the willingness to grow and adapt together. The solution lies in embracing vulnerability, addressing insecurities, and creating an environment where both partners feel recognized, validated, and appreciated for who they are. It's about building a deeper emotional and physical connection through open communication, shared experiences, and mutual respect. The pursuit of fulfillment outside the marriage often signals that something is lacking inside the relationship, and this can serve as an opportunity for growth rather than a sign of inevitable failure. Ultimately, a fulfilling and lasting relationship doesn't rely on external factors or fleeting moments of validation from others. It thrives on genuine connection, continuous effort, and a shared commitment to building a love that is deep, honest, and resilient. By acknowledging and addressing the complex factors that lead to attraction outside the marriage, couples can find the strength to repair, rekindle, and rediscover the love that first brought them together. Relationships are not static, they are dynamic and require constant care and nurturing. When both partners are willing to put in the work, the bond that exists between them can be stronger and more enduring than ever before.